grey mare had bitten through half her rein before the Duke finished explaining why Rosalind Mercer could not be trusted with the Westbridge team. 12 gentlemen stood around the coaching yard. Not one of them noticed. Rosalind did. "Do not harness her on the left lead," she said. The Duke did not even turn. "Mr. Rooke has supplied sufficient evidence." "Miss Mercer." Rosalind looked at the mare's white-rimmed eye, then at the rain gathering over Westbridge Hill. "Then evidence," she said quietly. "We'll have to survive the journey." 3 days later, someone harnessed the mare on the left. But on that first morning, beneath a sky the color of unpolished pewter, the warning vanished as warnings from women often did not through argument, but through the simple decision of important men to continue speaking. Adrian Harcourt, Duke of Westbridge, stood beside Mr. William Kerr, the regional mail contractor. Adrian was 35, tall, spare, and dressed with the severe correctness of a man who considered ornament a confession of weakness. He had inherited an estate burdened by debt and a town burdened by the consequences. In 6 years, he had reduced one, repaired much of the other, and acquired the habit of believing that whatever could be measured could also be mastered. Mr. Thomas Rooke understood that habit. He had arrived with tables of journey times, feed costs, and previous contracts bound neatly in red leather. Rosalind had arrived with 4 horses. They were not matched in color. One was a deep bay, one nearly black, one a plain brown mare with a white heel, and the fourth a compact chestnut gelding, whose left ear had been split before he came to Mercer Yard. To the gentlemen assembled, Rooke's 4 greys looked like order. Rosalind's team looked like compromise. A male team must present confidence, Sir Malcolm Reed observed. Rosalind rested one gloved hand on the chestnut shoulder. A male team must complete the stage. Mr. Kerr suppressed something that might have been amusement. The Duke did not. "No one disputes your devotion to the animals under your care," Adrian said. There it was, devotion. Had Rooke noticed the mare's strained breathing? Adrian would have called it judgment. Had one of the coachmen noticed the chewed rein? He would have called it experience. In Rosalind, the same attention became affection, a softer thing, admirable perhaps, but unfit to carry His Majesty's post through November rain. "My devotion is not entered in the trial," she replied. "My team is—" That made him turn. Their eyes met across the yard. Adrian's were grey, not warm, but not empty either. He looked at people as if a hidden column of figures stood beside each of them. Rosalind wondered what sum he had already written beside her name. "You intend to compete?" he asked. "I submitted my notice to Mr. Kerr yesterday." Kerr cleared his throat. "Mercer Yard meets the property requirement. Miss Mercer is sole proprietor of the lease and stock." Several men looked surprised. Benjamin Crow, Mercer Yard's head ostler, looked offended on Rosalind's behalf. He had spent 20 years being surprised whenever other men discovered what he considered obvious. Rooke was not surprised. His broad, handsome face remained composed. "You cannot afford the loss," he said to Rosalind. It was spoken gently enough to pass for concern. "Then you should have no difficulty defeating me. The first trial would last 7 days. Each supplier would provide a team for the difficult western stage, 9 miles from Westbridge to the change at Hatherby, over a long incline, through a narrow cutting, and down the exposed shoulder of Bellwether Hill. The teams would be judged on time, control, condition at arrival, and cost. At the end of 21 days, Kerr would recommend one supplier for the coming year. The stakes reached beyond 2 stable yards. If the Westbridge stage failed again, Kerr intended to divert the route through Elliston. The King's Arms would lose its coaching trade. Wheelwrights, harness makers, ostlers, laundresses, kitchen maids, and carriers would lose work. Merchants would wait longer for letters and remittances. A line altered on a contractor's map could empty half a street. Adrian had guaranteed the improvements to the King's Arms and financed repairs to the road approach. If the route moved, he would lose a considerable sum. Rosalind could lose everything. Mercer Yard had survived her father's last illness, 2 poor seasons, and the quiet departure of clients who discovered that Mr. Mercer's capable daughter had become Miss Mercer, proprietor. It would not survive another winter without a major contract. Rooke knew this because he had once kept its books, hired its men, and carried its methods into drawing rooms where Rosalind herself was never invited. As the gentleman moved toward the inn, he remained beside her. "Withdraw before Kerr publishes the first figures," he said. "I can still offer you work. Work I already know how to do. Work the market will purchase." He glanced toward Adrian. "Westbridge does not dislike you. Rosalind, he simply understands the world." Then perhaps the world has been poorly explained to him. For the first 2 days, Rooke's greys performed exactly as promised. They were fast, beautifully turned out, and changed at the stage with military precision. The Duke watched both departures. He did not visit Mercer Yard. Rosalind's team was slower by 4 minutes on the first run and 2 on the second, but they arrived breathing evenly. They drank without gulping. None favored a leg when cooled. Kerr wrote down the time. Rosalind wrote down everything else. On the evening before Rooke's 3rd run, she passed through the King's Arms yard and found the grey mare tied beneath the gallery. The rein had been replaced. The cause had not. The mare shifted when the left leader moved too close. Her nostrils tightened. The skin along her shoulder trembled. Rosalind asked the young ostler who had paired them, "Mr. Rooke's list." "Miss, did you tell him she has been chewing leather? He said she would settle once moving." Rosalind placed her palm near the mare's cheek without touching. The animal turned toward it, then flinched when a bucket struck stone behind her. Adrian entered the yard as Rosalind stepped back. "You are examining your opponent's team. I am looking at a frightened horse. Mr. Rooke says you have objected to that mare twice. The mare has objected rather more often." His gaze went to the fresh rein. "What precisely do you believe will happen?" It was the first direct question he had asked her. Rosalind could have answered sharply. Instead, she showed him the rubbed leather at the bit ring, the tension in the left shoulder, the way the mare's eye followed the neighboring grey. "She is not afraid of the road," Rosalind said. "She is afraid of being crowded from the right. Put her on the left lead, and she cannot move away. On Bellwether Hill, when the traces tighten, she will resist the horse beside her before she listens to the driver." Adrian watched the mare. For one moment, Rosalind thought he saw it. Then Rooke crossed the yard carrying his red leather case. "She did the same in Leeds," he said. "A nervous habit. She completed every stage." Adrian looked from Rooke's records to Rosalind's uncovered hand beside the mare's face. "The trial cannot be altered each time one supplier questions another's judgment." "No," Rosalind said. "It can only be altered before the judgment kills something." His expression hardened not with cruelty, but with the affront of a man who believed himself responsible and had been told responsibility might not be enough. "The team will run as entered." The next morning, rain swept across Westbridge Hill. Rooke's 4 greys came into the yard shining, plated, and perfectly matched. The frightened mare stood on the left lead. The mail coach left Westbridge at 6 minutes past 8, its lamps burning against the rain. Rosalind did not ride with it, neither did Adrian. The trial required the suppliers to present their teams, not accompany them, and Kerr had forbidden both parties from interfering on the road. They waited at Hatherby, 9 miles away. Rooke spoke easily with Sir Malcolm near the inn fire. Adrian stood at the window, consulting his watch. Rosalind remained outside beneath the overhang, where she could hear the road. At first, there was only rain. Then came a horn, 1 long note, then 2 broken ones. Not the scheduled signal. Rosalind was already moving when the boy from the toll bar appeared on a lathered pony. "Coach is across the road at Bellwether," he gasped. Team won't move. Passenger struck his head. Rooke demanded details. Adrian called for horses. Rosalind took the bay mare tied beside the trough. She did not ask whose it was. Bellwether Hill was not steep enough to be famous, only treacherous enough to be underestimated. The road curved along an exposed shoulder before entering a narrow cutting. Wind pressed from the west. Rain polished the chalk and stone. The coach stood crooked across the road, one rear wheel against the bank. The guard held the leaders while the coachman fought the reins from the box. A gentleman passenger sat under a cloak with blood at his temple. Two others shouted conflicting advice. The grey mare on the left lead had not bolted. She had done something more dangerous. She had planted herself sideways, pressing into the pole team. While trying to escape the horse at her right, the traces were tangled. Every pull from the coachman tightened the confinement she feared. Rooke reached the team first. Drive her forward. The whip cracked above the horses. The mare reared. Rosalind slid from the bay and handed the reins to the toll boy. Stop striking her. Rooke turned. This is my team. Then help me keep it alive. She did not approach the mare's head. She went to the right leader, the animal crowding her, and loosened the outside trace. Crow, she called, though Ben had only just arrived. Take the right horse wide when I say. Adrian came down the road behind him, rain darkening his coat. The coach must be moved, he said. Then be quiet. The words silenced everyone, perhaps because no one had ever addressed the Duke of Westbridge in that tone, or perhaps because Rosalind's stillness made their noise appear foolish. She waited, the grey mare's eye fixed on her. Rosalind lowered her own gaze and breathed slowly, visibly, not magic, not communion. A pause, space, the removal of pressure. Now, Ben drew the right leader outward. The mare found open air beside her. Her front feet came down. Rosalind moved to the bridle and turned her gently away from the coach. Rooke released the opposite trace. Together they freed her from the team. The remaining 3 horses brought the coach straight. Another horse was fetched from the toll farm. The passenger's injury proved shallow, though dramatic in blood. The mail reached Hatherby 37 minutes late. No one died. No wheel shattered. No hero carried anyone from a ravine. Yet 37 minutes was enough to endanger the Westbridge route. At the Hatherby yard, Kerr wrote down the delay. What caused it? He asked. Rooke removed his wet gloves. An unpredictable animal. Rosalind looked at him. Was she unpredictable yesterday? Kerr's pen stopped. Adrian stood near the stable door, rain running from his hair. How did you know? Rosalind's anger had cooled during the ride. What remained was worse. You had my answer before the journey. I am asking for it now. No, Your Grace, you are asking after the cost has made the answer respectable. Rooke's mouth tightened. This is not the hour for speeches. It was not the hour for listening either. Apparently, Kerr ordered the grey mare removed from the trial. Rooke's first 7-day score would retain the delay. Rosalind's team would run the next morning. Adrian followed her into the stable passage. Miss Mercer. She continued toward the loose box where the mare had been placed. Rosalind. It was the first time he had used her Christian name. It stopped her, though she disliked that it did. I made the wrong judgment. The apology was direct, unadorned, and private. She turned. Yes. He seemed almost startled that she did not soften it for him. I will account for it in my report to Kerr. Will you account for why it happened? Rooke had records from previous stages, and I had the horse in front of me. One could be independently verified. By whom? He did not answer. Inside the loose box, the mare shifted at the voices. Rosalind entered and examined the rubbed shoulder. Adrian remained beyond the half door. You believe I trusted him because he is a man. I believe you called his confidence evidence and my evidence affection. That was not my intention. A horse may not intend to tread on your foot. The bruise is the same. For the first time, Something moved beneath his control. Not anger, recognition, perhaps, though incomplete. "What would you have me do?" Rosalind looked up. "Do not ask the person you have injured to design your innocence." She returned to the mare. The next morning, Mercer's mismatched team took the western stage. They climbed Bellwether without incident and reached Hatherby 3 minutes behind Rooke's best time. Kerr wrote down the time. At Norn, he asked Rooke how long his greys required before they could safely work again. Rooke answered, 4 hours. Rosalind knew they required 6. That evening she crossed the King's Arms yard and found Rooke showing Adrian how he would alter the pairing for the next run. The left leader must be given more space at the shoulder. Rooke explained, "Pressure between the leaders transfers back through the pole team." It was Rosalind's method, not merely the conclusion, but the phrasing. Adrian listened closely. "That should prevent a recurrence. It has done so in every team I have corrected." Rosalind stood beneath the archway with the rain behind her. Rooke saw her. He did not falter. Adrian turned and found her watching. For an instant, she thought he understood. Then he said, "Mr. Rooke appears to have reached the same conclusion." "Yes." Rosalind replied, "He often does." 2 days later, the Duke came to Mercer Yard. He arrived without a groom, which did not make him less conspicuous. A duke could dress like a clerk and still cause 3 stable boys to stand straighter, merely by crossing a threshold. Rosalind was in the schooling ring with the chestnut gelding. The animal had once pulled left whenever the traces tightened. Now he moved between 2 quiet older horses, learning not to anticipate pain that was no longer coming. Adrian watched a complete circuit before speaking. "Why is the black horse on the weaker side?" "Because he is not weaker. He favors the near fore. When standing, not when pulling." She signaled Ben to walk the team again. The black horse settled into the incline, steadying the chestnut without crowding him. "Your team is slower because you are matching temperaments rather than paces," Adrian said. "My team is slower during the first mile. By the 9th, they have lost less. Kerr's current figures do not measure that. Then his figures are measuring a shorter journey than his coach travels." Adrian stepped nearer the rail. "Show me." It was not an apology. It was better than one in that moment. Rosalind showed him the recovery notes, the water taken, the change in breathing after the hill, and the condition of each hoof. He asked precise questions. She gave precise answers. For nearly an hour, neither mentioned Rooke. It was the first conversation Rosalind had ever had with a gentleman of rank in which she did not feel required to translate competence into charm. That was why his next question cut so cleanly. "When did Rooke teach you the shoulder spacing method?" Rosalind closed the notebook. "Why do you assume he taught me? He used it in contracts before your father died, and I used it in our yard before Mr. Rooke had a contract. Can you establish that?" "The horse established it on Bellwether Hill. That establishes the method, not its author." She looked at him for a long moment. "You have learned quickly." "Your Grace, I beg your pardon. 3 days ago, my judgment was affection. Today, my work is another man's instruction." He came around the rail. "I am trying to understand a commercial dispute that may compromise Kerr's trial." "No. You are trying to locate a version of events that can be certified without requiring you to reconsider whom you certify." Before he could respond, hooves sounded in the lane. Rooke entered with a clerk and the red leather case. He laid 3 documents on the tackroom table. The first was a supply agreement from 5 years earlier. The second granted him authority to present Mercer Yard's conditioning practices to clients. The third bore Rosalind's signature. Adrian read it twice. "You agree to this?" Rosalind heard no triumph in his voice. That almost made it worse. I did. Rooke removed his hat. Her father was dying. The yard owed wages. I could obtain the lead's contract if the methods were presented under an established manager's name. Your name, Adrian said. The name buyers knew, and after Mr. Mercer's death, Rooke looked at Rosalind. The arrangement continued. Because you said every client would leave if it did not. Was I wrong? She could have said yes. Pride invited it. But 3 clients had left when she dismissed Rooke. 2 others had written that they preferred to deal with a gentleman. The largest had asked whether Ben might sign in her place. No, she said. You were not wrong about them. Adrian's gaze moved between the signature and her face. Then what is it you claim, Mr. Rooke has stolen? Nothing I can prove to your satisfaction. She gathered the documents and returned them to Rooke. That is not an answer, Adrian said. It is the only answer you have left room to hear. Kerr summoned them that afternoon. Rumors of a dispute had reached the other investors. He cared less about authorship than the possibility that either supplier might challenge the result. Settle it, he told Adrian. Or I move the stage to Elliston and let them quarrel over who taught whom. While the mail runs on time, Adrian requested a private meeting with Rosalind. They met in the empty dining room of the King's Arms after dusk. Rain tapped the windows. A single branch of candles stood between them. I have a proposal, he said. You have had several. This one keeps Mercer Yard open. He placed a memorandum on the table. No seals. No final names. Rosalind read the first page. Rooke would remain official supplier. Rosalind would inspect the teams, determine pairings, and advise on recovery. Her fee would be larger than the profit she could reasonably expect from winning the stage herself. Her name would not appear on the contract. You call this settlement? She asked. I call it a way to preserve the route, protect the town, and pay you properly for your work. Properly, but privately. The commercial world already recognizes Rooke. We cannot alter every prejudice before winter, so we shall employ mine. That is unfair. Yes. He leaned one hand on the table. You signed the original agreement when 14 men needed wages and my father could no longer remember their names. Then you made a difficult decision. I made a desperate one. You are asking me to make it permanent. He paced once toward the window and back. If you refuse and the route moves, dozens of families suffer. Rosalind's throat tightened because he had found the argument she used against herself every night. And if I accept, she said, what will they learn? That Mercer Yard survived. They will learn that my work is valuable, provided no one knows it is mine. For the first time, Adrian's composure broke into frustration. Must recognition matter more than consequence? Rosalind folded the memorandum. Only to those who have always possessed it does recognition appear a vanity. She placed the paper before him. You have mistaken better payment for better treatment. Then she left him alone with the candles and the unsigned space where her name should have been. Adrian did not sleep. He told himself it was because Kerr required an answer, because the route affected the town, because Rooke's first trial had already been compromised and Mercer's second was too slow. He did not tell himself that Rosalind's refusal had exposed something in him he had mistaken for virtue. He had offered her money, safety, and influence. He had expected resistance, but not contempt. By morning, his frustration had hardened into judgment. If she placed public credit above the employment of half Westbridge, perhaps he had overestimated her practical sense. That belief lasted until he entered the town. At the wheelwright's shop, 2 men were repairing a Mercer carriage without asking when they would be paid. At the King's Arms, the laundress told Kerr that Rosalind had kept her eldest son employed through the previous winter. Ben Crow had postponed his own wages during Mr. Mercer's illness. Rosalind had repaid every shilling before buying herself a new coat. She was not indifferent to consequence. She had simply counted a consequence Adrian had never been required to count. The second week of trials began under clear skies. Rosalind's team reached Hatherby 2 minutes outside Rooke's best time. On the return stage, they made up 1 minute. The following morning, they repeated it. On the third day, they arrived with all 4 horses breathing evenly enough to work again after 4 hours. Rooke's greys were faster. They required 6. Kerr's table contained a column for arrival time and none for recovery. Adrian requested 1 be added. Kerr raised an eyebrow. At whose suggestion? Mine. It was not yet courage. He knew that it was merely the first time he placed his own name on something he had learned from Rosalind. That afternoon, he watched her examine the chestnut-split ear. After a gust slammed a stable door, she did not stroke the horse or murmur nonsense. She gave him room, then returned him to the same doorway until he passed it without flinching. "You do not spare them fear," Adrian said. Rosalind continued adjusting the bridle. "No, you wait until it passes. Fear does not always pass. Sometimes it learns there is somewhere else to go." He thought of his father's debts, of sealed rooms and shouting creditors, of the vow he had made at 29 never to let feeling rule Westbridge again. "And if it refuses to move, then I ask whether I have mistaken terror for disobedience." She looked at him then. Neither of them was speaking only of horses. Their attraction did not arrive like lightning. It accumulated in observations. Adrian noticed that Rosalind always checked the stable boys' knots without humiliating them. Rosalind noticed that Adrian read every figure himself. Rather than allowing a secretary to tell him what it meant, he began asking what she saw before offering what he thought. She began answering without preparing for dismissal. Yet the unsigned memorandum remained between them, invisible and unrevoked. Rooke sensed the change. He approached Rosalind after her 5th run. "He admires you now. Does that injure the contract?" "It may injure you." She turned from the water trough. Rooke's expression held no jealousy. It held memory. "Men of rank enjoy discovering an exception," he said. "It allows them to keep the rule. You believe I am an exception. I believe you are useful enough to be forgiven for being a woman. That is not the same as being accepted as one." The cruelty of the remark lay in its resemblance to truth. That evening, Adrian came to Mercer Yard carrying her recovery sheets. "Kerr has agreed to score condition at arrival and readiness for a second stage. Because you asked, because the route requires it. That was not my question." He paused. "Yes, because I asked." "And did you tell him why?" "I told him the original trial measured speed at the expense of reliability." "Did you tell him who saw it?" Silence. Rosalind almost laughed. Though nothing was amusing, Adrian looked down at the papers, then back at her. "You are right. That has not yet proved useful." He walked to the tackroom desk, took up a pen, and added beneath the new recovery column, "Recommended by Miss Rosalind Mercer, proprietor of Mercer Yard." He did not flourish it. He did not look at her for praise. He simply placed the sheet back in her hands. It was a small act, too small to repair anything. It mattered nonetheless. "Thank you," she said. The words altered the air more than either expected. Adrian's gaze lowered briefly to her mouth before returning to her eyes. Rosalind felt the movement like warmth near a flame. He stepped back. Restraint was not absence, it was choice. For the first time, she wondered what kind of man Adrian Harcourt might become if he learned that control and understanding were not the same thing. For the first time, he wondered whether she might remain long enough to see. Neither spoke of it. Outside, the Mercer horses settled into the dark, each in the place Rosalind had chosen. The third and final week would begin in 4 days, and one horse in Rooke's new team had begun to favour his right foreleg. Rosalind saw the lameness before anyone else, because it was barely lameness at all. The bay gelding did not shorten his stride. He shifted his weight when standing, resting the right fore for 3 breaths, then taking it again when Rooke approached. She said nothing, not because the horse was sound, because every warning from her now entered the yard as a weapon before it could be considered information. She examined her own team and hated the silence. Adrian found her after dusk in the harness room, repairing a breast strap. Rooke has entered the bay gelding for the final week. Her needle stopped. Then he believes the horse can run. Do you? Why are you asking? Because you looked at him this morning and then spent the entire day avoiding him. Rosalind resumed stitching. You are learning observation from a source I am now prepared to name. Despite herself, she smiled. He sat on the opposite side of the work table. The room smelled of leather, lamp oil, and rain beginning on the roof. Tell me, he said. He is protecting the right fore. It may be no more than bruising. It may become worse under a loaded coach. Have you examined him? He is not mine to examine. Kerr can require it. Then let Kerr require it. Because the trial protects horses and passengers, not because the Duke has developed faith in one troublesome woman. Adrian accepted the rebuke. I will ask Hale to inspect every entered horse. Mr. Edmund Hale was a veterinary surgeon from York, educated at the London College and respected by Kerr's contractors. Requiring him to examine all teams prevented Rosalind's warning from becoming a private favour. That is better, she said. Adrian watched her draw the thread tight. Was it like this with Rooke? She knew what he meant. No. The rain strengthened. Ben crossed the yard outside. Calling good night, Rosalind set down the strap. My father began forgetting things 2 years before he died. First appointments, then accounts, then which horses he had sold. Rooke corrected the mistakes without telling clients. I corrected the horses, and the yard owed 6 weeks' wages when the Leeds offer came. She remembered 14 men standing beneath that very roof. Pretending not to know there was no money, Ben had removed his cap and said he could wait. His wife was expecting their 4th child. The buyer liked the conditioning system. Rosalind continued. He would not sign with me. Rooke said he could present it as his own practice and bring the contract back. You agreed, I asked for one night. He said we did not have one. Adrian's face tightened. Did he threaten you? No. That would make the story easier. She looked toward the dark window. He told me the truth. The men needed wages. My father needed medicine. The buyer would sign Rooke or walk away. So I signed, and after your father died, Rooke said we should continue until the yard was stable, then until the next contract, then until clients had grown accustomed to me. The day never came when my name was convenient. Adrian was silent. You think I should have refused sooner, she said. No. The certainty surprised her. I think I offered you the same bargain with kinder language. He did not move closer. He did not ask her to relieve his remorse. I am sorry. The apology contained no explanation. That made room for her anger without attempting to negotiate it away. Thank you, she said at last. They sat with the rain between them and the years behind her. Adrian looked at her hands, scarred lightly by work. Do you regret it? The men were paid. That is not an answer. It is the answer I have used. He understood then that Rosalind's deepest injury was not simply that Rooke had taken credit. It was that she had helped him do it, for reasons she still honored. To condemn her younger self would condemn the people she had saved. To excuse the arrangement forever would erase the woman she had become. A desperate agreement need not become a lifelong sentence, he said. Her eyes lifted to his. The distance across the table seemed suddenly very small. Adrian reached for the repaired strap at the same moment she did. Their fingers touched. Neither drew away immediately. His hand was warmer than she expected. Hers was steadier than she felt. He looked at her, as though asking a question he had not earned the right to speak. Rosalind withdrew first. Mr. Hale will arrive in the morning. Yes, you should sleep. So should you. He stood, but at the door he turned. Rosalind, yes, whatever Kerr decides, the recovery standard will remain for every future trial at Westbridge. It was the first change Adrian had made that did not depend on her accepting anything from him. The next morning, Hal examined every horse. The bay gelding showed tenderness, but no clear injury. Hal recommended reduced work and another examination before the final run. Rooke objected, then agreed. For 3 days, the gelding appeared improved. Meanwhile, Rosalind found an old evaluation among her father's papers. The observations were hers. Rooke's corrections appeared in darker ink. His signature stood at the bottom. Adrian wanted to show it to Kerr. Rosalind refused. It proves the method was yours. It proves I wrote 1 page. It supports your claim. I will not exchange dependence on Rooke's name for dependence on a lucky sheet of paper. Evidence is not dependence. It is when you will only see me through it. He almost argued. Then he stopped. What do you want? A trial that can recognize the work in front of it. The final run was scheduled for Monday. On Sunday evening, the bay gelding stood square. On Monday morning, when the harness was lifted, he shifted his weight from the right fore. The young ostler saw Rosalind watching. Should he run? Miss. Rosalind looked toward Rooke, Kerr, and Adrian at the far end of the yard. No, she said. He should not. The ostler pulled the horse from the team. Rooke turned at the sound of the trace falling, and the final trial began with an accusation. Who ordered that horse removed? Rooke's voice struck the yard harder than the drop trace. The young ostler went pale. I did, sir. On whose authority? The boy looked at Rosalind. That was enough. Rooke crossed the yard. You have interfered with my team. I answered a question. You told my ostler the horse was unsound. He is protecting the right fores. Hal examined him. Yesterday, Rooke turned to Kerr. This trial is finished. She has delayed my departure and manipulated a servant against me. Kerr ordered the horse reharnessed only after inspection. Hale had not yet arrived. Every minute counted against Rooke's time. Adrian came to Rosalind. Did you instruct the boy to remove him? No. What precisely did you say? He asked whether the horse should run. I said no, knowing he might act, hoping someone would. Adrian lowered his voice. Then Rooke's complaint is not without foundation. There it was again. Foundation, evidence, procedure. Rosalind looked past him to the bay gelding, now standing with the right fore slightly advanced. Is the horse fit to run? That is for Hale to determine. Hale is not here, which is why we must wait. And while we wait, whose judgment governs? No one's. Rooke's horse was being harnessed. His judgment was already governing. Adrian's jaw tightened. I am trying not to favor either of you. Neutrality is a comfortable name for leaving the existing decision untouched. Kerr approached. Until Hale arrives. Both teams are held. I will determine whether Miss Mercer's conduct warrants a penalty. Rosalind felt the eyes of the yard turn toward her. Not the horse. Her. Examine his foot, she said. We will. Now. Miss Mercer, Adrian warned. She faced him. You do not need proof of my intention. You need to decide whether that horse should have been sent onto Bellwether Hill. Those are separate questions. Only to the people who will not be beneath the coach if you answer the wrong one first. For one instant she saw conflict in him. He believed her. She knew he did. But he also believed fairness required him to withhold that belief until someone with recognized authority confirmed it. Wait for Hale, he said. The words were quiet. They broke something. Rosalind removed her entry ribbon from the Mercer harness. What are you doing? Kerr demanded. Withdrawing. Ben stepped forward. Miss Mercer. She handed him the ribbon. Adrian followed her toward the arch. If you leave now, Rooke will say you acted to compromise his run. He has already said it, and others may believe him. Then you must all decide what you believe. That is what the examination is for. Rosalind stopped beneath the arch, where rain made a silver curtain beyond the yard. You believed me when belief cost you nothing. His face changed. That is not fair. No, it is not. I admitted I was wrong about the mare. I changed Kerr's standards. I named your contribution. And the first time trusting me might compromise the trial. You asked me to stand aside until a man confirmed what I saw. Hale is a veterinary surgeon, and I am the competitor, whose judgment you have spent 3 weeks testing. He had no answer that did not return them to the same place. Rosalind stepped into the rain. Rosalind. She turned once. There was pain in Adrian's eyes. Real pain. It tempted the part of her that had spent years making hard decisions easier for other people. She refused it. If I remain only until you certify my innocence, she said. My name still belongs to you. Then she left. Hale arrived too late to preserve the trial, but soon enough to prove the horse should never have entered it. Heat beneath the hoof and tenderness along the heel made the hill unsafe under load. Rosalind had been right. The men around Adrian immediately began arguing over whether she had possessed the authority to be right. Rooke spoke of interference. Kerr spoke of procedure. Neither spoke of the empty place where Rosalind's team should have stood. Adrian looked down at the score sheet he had approved. It could count a delayed departure. It could count a substituted horse. It could record a supplier's objection in a neat ruled space. It had nowhere to record the judgment of the woman who had prevented harm. Had Rosalind interfered? Perhaps. Had she protected the horse and passengers? Certainly. Why? Then, had his rules placed those actions in conflict? At Mercer Yard, Rosalind told the men there would be no contract. Ben removed his cap. We can last until Christmas. No, she said. We can pay everyone until Christmas. That is not the same. She would sell 2 carriages, reduce the stock, and find placements for the youngest men. She spoke calmly until each practical step lay in order. Only after the yard was quiet did she enter her father's old office and close the door. She did not weep because Adrian had failed to defend her. She wept because for several days she had believed he might not. That hope had been more dangerous than his first contempt. Contempt could be resisted. Hope asked to be trusted. At Westbridge House, Adrian placed every score sheet across his desk. They were orderly, detailed, and wrong. They could count 37 lost minutes. They could count a changed horse and a delayed departure. They could not count the moment Rosalind had seen fear in an animal 12 men called Sound. They could not recognize caution until a man with an accepted title confirmed it. The rules were not blind. They had simply been taught whom to see. Adrian had asked Rosalind for proof. He had never asked whether his proof was capable of seeing her. Adrian did not go to Mercer Yard. Every impulse urged him there. He wanted to apologize, explain, and persuade Rosalind to return before Kerr moved the route. For once, he recognized that his urgency did not create her obligation. Instead, Adrian summoned Kerr and Rooke to the assembly room above the inn, where the original standards had been approved. Hal's examination was already before them. So were the ostler's accounts and the repeated stage records. Together they established three things without requiring half Westbridge to speak. Rosalind had warned, not ordered. The bay should not have run. And her slower team remained sound. After Rooke's faster horses had begun to fail, Adrian placed the old score sheets on the table. Rosalind's empty chair stood opposite him. The result is void. Kerr's expression darkened. You cannot void a contract trial because you regret offending a woman. No, but I can withdraw my guarantee from a trial that mistakes the fastest mile for the safest journey. Rooke folded his arms. My team is faster. Once, Adrian said, Rosalind's can safely do it again. You are using her language now. Adrian looked at the sheets bearing his own approval. I should have used it when the horse was still in the yard. Rooke glanced toward the empty chair. Would you be changing these rules if you had not fallen in love with her? The room went still. Adrian did not deny the feeling. To deny it would use Rosalind's dignity to protect his own. My feelings are why I will take no part in the judgment, he said. My error is why the judgment must change. You will lose every shilling invested in my team. Yes, and the confidence of the consortium. Possibly. Rooke stared at him, as if sacrifice made sense only when it purchased something. What has she promised you? Nothing. It was the first answer Adrian gave that made the room silent for the right reason. Rooke's gaze returned to Rosalind's empty chair. And if she does not return, the rules remain. That was the answer Kerr needed. If Adrian redesigned the trial only to produce Rosalind's victory, it would be favoritism. If the new standard remained without her, it was reform. Kerr agreed to one final evaluation. It would no longer reward the fastest single stage. It would ask which team could complete the journey, recover, and safely do it again. Hale, an experienced coachman, would judge with Kerr. Adrian would pay the cost. He would not score. The revised notice was delivered to every eligible supplier in the district. The copy sent to Mercer Yard contained no personal letter. Ben waited beside the desk while Rosalind read the notice twice. The new standards reflected nearly every objection she had raised. Not only those affecting Mercer Yard, they would protect Rooke's horses too. They would remain if another supplier won. Adrian had finally acted without asking her to reward him. That mattered. It did not erase the archway in the rain. We are not entering, she said. Ben nodded. By the following afternoon, Mercer Yard had received no love letter from the Duke. It received something more difficult to refuse. The people whose livelihoods depended upon the stage. They did not speak of romance. They spoke of the route. Rooke may win, Rosalind said. After they had gone, Ben remained. Do not return for him, he said. Return because, for once, they have built a trial that can hear you. That evening, Rosalind walked through Mercer Yard. The bay mare turned toward her. The black horse stamped once. The chestnut with the split ear watched the doorway, no longer afraid of the sound it made. Rosalind had told herself that withdrawing protected her name, but a name protected by never being risked was only another kind of invisibility. She entered Mercer Yard the following morning, not for Adrian, not to defeat Rooke, because a fair trial had finally been built, and she would not ask the next woman to enter it first. The final evaluation began beneath a clear, cold sky. There were no 12 gentlemen arranged for spectacle. Kerr stood with Hale and the 2 independent coachmen. Ostlers carried printed scoring sheets. Adrian watched from the gallery of the King's Arms. Outside the judging enclosure, Rosalind brought the same mismatched team. Rooke brought 4 dark bays, powerful and beautifully conditioned. Before departure, he approached her. "You could still work with me. Under whose name? Must everything become an accusation?" "No. Some things may become an ending." His face softened with something close to grief. "I kept that yard alive." "You did." He had not expected agreement. Rosalind continued. "And when it lived, you would not give it back." The first outward stage belonged to Rooke. His team reached Hatherby 2 minutes ahead. No one mocked Rosalind. That almost made the loss harder. Hale examined both teams. Rooke's bays showed greater fatigue, but remained sound. Mercer's recovered sooner. On the return stage, the wind rose over Bellwether. Rooke changed 1 horse. Rosalind changed none. Her team reached Westbridge 40 seconds behind. After 2 stages, Rooke still led on time. After recovery was scored, the difference narrowed. The final outward stage began before dawn on the 3rd day. Frost silvered the road edges. A hard wind came through the cutting. Rosalind stood beside each horse before they were harnessed. She did not whisper encouragement. She checked the traces, the bit placement, the chestnut's left ear, and the black horse's near fore. Adrian came down from the gallery but stopped beyond the marked enclosure. "Miss Mercer, Your Grace, I wanted to wish you." He stopped. Luck was not what she had asked for. "A true result," he said instead. "Thank you." It was enough. Rooke's team departed first. Mercer followed after the required interval. At Bellwether Hill, the chestnut lost rhythm when a sheet of loose canvas snapped at the toll cottage. 6 weeks earlier, he would have pulled left. Rosalind's pairing held him straight. The black horse steadied without crowding. The team lost 20 seconds and regained 12 before Hatherby. They did not produce a miracle. They produced a journey. At the final yard, the horses stood blowing steam into the cold air. Hale examined them. The coachman compared the times. Ostlers recorded water, heat, and recovery. Kerr completed the sums alone. Adrian did not enter the room. Rosalind waited in the public parlour with Ben. Rooke stood at the window. For the first time since she had known him, he had no papers in his hands. Kerr entered carrying the contract. On arrival time alone, Mr. Rooke's team leads by 1 minute and 12 seconds. Rooke breathed out. On condition, recovery, substitution, and repeated stage reliability, Mercer Yard leads by 11 points. No one moved. Kerr looked at Rosalind. The Westbridge Horse Supply Agreement is awarded to Miss Rosalind Mercer, sole proprietor of Mercer Coaching Yard. Her name sounded unfamiliar in the room, not because she had never heard it, because she had never heard it attached publicly to the work everyone already knew. Kerr placed the contract before her. The supplier line was no longer blank. Rosalind Mercer. She signed beneath it. Ben turned away to wipe his face with unnecessary violence. Rooke remained by the window. Rosalind went to him. "I will not challenge the contracts already completed under your name." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Generous. No. Practical. But you will not use my current evaluations or methods without attribution. And if I refuse, then you will compete without them." He looked through the glass at the horses. "They will forget how this began. Perhaps they will say you did it alone. Then I will correct them." That answer defeated him more completely than humiliation could have done. Rosalind would not replace one full story with another. Rooke had helped save Mercer Yard. He had also mistaken help for ownership. Both truths would remain. Adrian entered only after Kerr had witnessed the signature. He addressed the room. not Rosalind. The first trial failed because I approved standards that rewarded appearance and reputation, while excluding knowledge held by those nearest the work. Miss Mercer warned me. I dismissed her warning. The cost was borne by others. No grand speech followed. I was wrong. Sir Malcolm looked away. Kerr folded the contract copy. The world did not end because a duke admitted error. It merely became slightly harder for the room to pretend he had never made one. Adrian approached Rosalind. "Congratulations, Miss Mercer." "Thank you, Your Grace." Pain flickered across his face at the formality, but he accepted it. "I do not expect forgiveness. Good. Nor an answer to anything I have not earned the right to ask." She studied him. This was not the man who had asked what she wanted him to do, so that she might design his innocence. He had begun, at last, to decide what was right without making her responsible for the reward. "Then we understand one another," she said. "I hope one day we may do more than that. Hope is not a contract. No, it requires patience. I am learning." Rosalind looked toward the yard where her team waited, then continued. Winter passed. The Westbridge stage retained its route. Mercer Yard hired 4 more men and promoted the young ostler who had pulled Rooke's horse. The recovery standard was adopted on 2 neighbouring stages after Kerr discovered that fewer injured horses also meant lower replacement costs. Rooke won another contract. This time his proposal credited Mercer's pairing principles where he used them. Adrian did not visit every day. That, too, was evidence of learning. He came when invited to observe a trial. He asked questions and sometimes accepted an answer without improving it. When he disagreed, he did so without invoking rank. He funded repairs to the public road through the ordinary trust process, rather than presenting them as a gift to Mercer Yard. He never again asked Rosalind to work without her name. In early spring, he arrived carrying the old rein from the grey mare. The leather remained nearly bitten through. "I kept it," he said, "because it was the first evidence I failed to understand." Rosalind took it from him. "No, it was evidence you understood and chose not to count." He inclined his head. "That is more accurate." The grey mare now worked as a single-carriage horse for a country physician, calm when not crowded. Rosalind had found her a place rather than forcing her to fit the team. Adrian watched the mare cross the far yard. "Will you teach me what I failed to see?" Rosalind considered him. He had not asked whether she loved him, though by then she knew that she did. Love had grown not from the force of his regret, but from the discipline of his change. She took a pair of work gloves from the rail and placed them in his hands. "I might," she said, "if you can bear not being the cleverest person in the yard." His smile was rare enough to alter his whole face. "I have recently received considerable evidence that I am not." She led him toward the waiting team. Adrian walked beside her. He did not take the reins. He did not interrupt. And when Rosalind began to explain what the horses were telling them, the Duke of Westbridge listened